processes that you undertake every day or the workflow that you're part of every day, and improve upon those, because now that you know that your voice has value and that you're being listened to, you can help to redesign and give your input on the small, steps that you take every day to complete your work. We're clarifying success, and we want your voice to help with that. Because a lot of times, and I think everybody's been in these kind of jobs where you do what you're supposed to do in the way that you've been trained, but along the way, after you've been there for, a year or two, you realize that there are, 3 or 4 extra steps here that really don't matter, or we're not, capturing the information that would help us with, data and process planning in the future. You have insight into the process and things could change. Well, since we've gone from, the transition to remote, then the transition to hybrid and transition to in office, a lot of those processes have gone through several iterations. And so people have stored up a lot of knowledge that's really deeply ingrained in the work that they're doing. They want to share how they can help improve these processes, whether it's reducing time or, clarifying steps, or, ideas because of technology that's developed over the last few years of, how to implement new tools in order to make things faster or make things better, or make things more user friendly. So people that are doing the jobs being able to contribute their voice and their knowledge to that conversation, that's really where the rubber hits the road.
Yeah. You mentioned values, and sometimes it feels like companies want to sell you their value, but it's like only a title or a tagline. And afterwards, when you go to really work there, it's not really working. They're just saying it. And people from the inside would tell you, yeah, it's not really there. How do you feel about them selling an idea or a value while they're not really doing it?
Well, that's an indicator that the programs that they've put in place have been, executed from a top-down, leadership-heavy, almost mandated manner. And the organizations that, are the antithesis of that, where you go in and you realize that the values and the mission and the vision are really driving the work and the culture, those are the organizations where the people doing the work have had a hand at creating, designing, developing, deploying those programs. So I like to use this, little story. There's this guy I have in my head, and he's just imaginary, but his name is Chip, and he wears boat shoes and no socks, and he's the leader of an organization, and he's, super sharp. And anybody who's old enough to remember James Spader from the 80s, he's the guy in my head. So he's, on Sunday morning drinking his coffee, sitting on his yacht, reading through HBR, and he finds out that some really successful organization has a program in place. And this program, they're talking about how successful it is. And he rolls in on Monday morning and says, hey, we're going to implement this because it's really successful. And he hasn't bothered to talk to the people it's going to impact, whether they even want that program, whether they see it's valuable, whether they want to, participate in it. He's just said, check in the box, we now have a program. And that's how that disconnect happens. There's a space in between the really successful ones and that, that example, where there are programs in place that could be really helpful. Let's say that they're wellness programs or well-being programs, and they aren't taken advantage of. They aren't engaged with because the organization hasn't been able to do a good job of marketing within the organization that these programs exist. That's a different type of problem, but one where you could end up going either way. It could be still a program that nobody's really interested in, or it could be a program that people would find great value in, but they just don't know about yet, so they're not taking advantage of it. So that again comes back to a communications program that allows people to understand what they have at their fingertips and how it could best help them. But the really successful driver there is, knowledge within the workforce that these exist and that there's something that they want to, participate in and use and support within the organization.
Oh, I think the line is cut. Just a minute. I guess you hear me, Elizabeth?
I can hear you.
Oh, something like went off. So what we're talking about mainly is the internal communication capabilities, the way that we are understanding the needs and executing the right plan, and everybody knows that it's relevant for them and use these new plans in order to make it better, right? And
Yes.
do you think that this internal communication is, I would say it's a skill. Do you feel it's even more important today than in the past?
Oh, I do. And I think that not only can you leverage it for talking about programs and policy, I think that it's really important to be utilized in an area where you're expressing understanding and compassion and patience. We all deserve a little grace right now. I think everybody is, almost maxed out on their bandwidth. Burnout is, prevalent just about every industry, every vertical that you can think of. When organizations can reduce the noise, the extraneous stuff around their workers, when they can let them understand that they are seen as an individual and that they are valued, and that it's understood that we are all going through a wide variety of experiences right